Good evening, everyone. Please, can I have your attention? Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 28th, 2019 meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission. The first order of business is to establish a quorum.
All right. Commissioner Draper? Commissioner Dubin? Here. Commissioner Goddard? Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Isaac?
Here.
Commissioner Pagotzi? Commissioner Sloss? Commissioner Huco?
Here.
And Chair Lewis.
Here. All right, so that is 5
That
out
is
of
5
9
out of-
establishes a quorum for the meeting. So tonight on the agenda, we have two items. One is a continuance of old business, and the other is a new business item. We have run into a little bit of a problem regarding the old business item, which is the text amendment continued from August 7th, 2019 regarding special events in the U2 district. Although we have a quorum for the meeting, we do not have a quorum for this item. One of the plan commissioners is a new member of the commission and has not had an opportunity to fully review the documents regarding the case. So he's not been able to watch the entire video from last time. So therefore, we cannot take action on this issue tonight. So I am looking for, I think our alternative is to postpone or continue the meeting until the this item, not the entire meeting. We will still be able to hear the second item on the agenda, but this item to the next scheduled meeting of the Plan Commission, which is Wednesday, September 11th. So I believe we would need a motion to continue.
I move that we continue this this matter until September 11th at 7 p.m.
Commissioner Isaac motion.
Second.
Commissioner Dubin seconds. So the voting members can be just the members relevant to this, to the four members. So what? I think you should, yeah. Why don't we just call the roll for the 4 members that can
Yes.
take action?
That'd be Commissioner Dubin? Yes. Commissioner Isaac?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloss? Yes. And Chair Lewis.
Yes. All right, so we have postponed this meeting, continued this meeting until this item, thank you, until September 11th at 7 o'clock. I'm sorry, everyone, but it's the procedure, so.
Can we get back our materials? We provided a lot of materials that are here.
I'll wait until the end of the meeting and we'll delay the law. Yes.
We're not going to. Okay, I'll stay.
All right, well.
So, we just found out about this.
that I've changed. Yeah, no, I get it. I've made plans to be here all night too. Like, but I mean, doing this twice would not be a good idea either.
I'm sorry, everyone. We do have business to conduct tonight, so if you can please continue your meetings out in the corridor, that would be great. But we need to move forward with the meeting. Thank you.
So I could go to September 23rd. And I've been.
All right. Okay.
It's a public document now. It's been submitted. It's part of the government record. We can't. It's not an option. Not right now. We're gonna need to continue the meeting.
Will we be on first again next time? September 11th? Thank you.
All right, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. The new business item is a text amendment for accessory recreational cannabis. No, I'm sorry. That has been continued to the September 11th meeting.
Motion.
So the second item is a text amendment to accessory recreational cannabis use item 19 PLND 0078. We are looking actually for a motion to continue this this item until the September 11th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Isaac,
Second.
Dubin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? All right, the motion, the item is continued until September 11th. The second item of new business is is a text amendment to the municipal use exception, item 19 PLND 007. Who will be presenting the information for? Mr. Mango.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, members of the public. This is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding the municipal use exemption. The Planning and Development Committee discussed this item, the use exemption, and looking at potentially any changes should be made to this section of the zoning ordinance, and gave support for adding noticing requirements. So that's why we're here this evening. So the existing regulations in 674 of the zoning ordinance allow for the establishment of certain governmental or proprietary uses owned or operated by the city, regardless of the zoning district. And the municipal use exemption provision zoning ordinance allows flexibility in location of municipal facilities. Some examples of that would be the Morton Civic Center right here, the Public Service Center, many of the commercial parking lots the city operates, the water treatment center. Many other facilities are not permitted by right or special uses within the zoning districts where they lie. I believe we're in the R4 district here. So that is the provision of the code that allows for the establishment of these types of uses within those districts. So we are proposing some changes to this section, most substantially to add notice for items that require city council approval. So the proposed changes or rewriting of the section is shown on the screen here. starting out with Section A, just stating that any governmental or proprietary function owned or operated by the city shall be a permitted use in any district. And then B, where there's construction of buildings or structures owned or operated by the city that do not comply with all the requirements of the underlying zoning district, the city council may authorize the construction if A, it finds the noncompliance is necessary for the city to perform the desired services, and B, the adverse impact on surrounding properties resulting from such noncompliance is minimized. So, example, this would be a building that has a setback that's not complying with the underlying district, for example, or is taller than the underlying district would otherwise allow. And then Section C, so if City Council approval is required per Section B, the Design and Project Review Committee shall review the planned construction prior to the City Council taking action and provide recommendations regarding the minimization of potential adverse impacts by design, architectural treatment, screening, landscaping, and/or placement on a lot. And then the subsection here goes into noticing requirements, which are similar to noticing requirements we have for other items. That would be mailed notice that we mail out by postcard using a third-party service to properties within 500-foot radius of the property lines of the subject property. And so that's the other addition. That's the most substantive change to this section. 500 feet is similar to the noticing requirements, or is the noticing requirement for a special use as well as for a major variation. So we felt there's some analogies there if it were not to comply with the underlying zoning district as far as some of the aspects of the building. So that's it. It's a fairly short section. Open for questions on that item, and then we get to it. We have the standards for text amendments before you.
All right, so we'll follow the regular procedure. First, I'll open it up to questions from commissioners. Commissioner Isaac, is that you?
Sure is.
All right.
So there's a few things in this language that I think are contradictory. And if under A, any governmental or proprietary function owned by the city is permitted in any district, then under what circumstances would B or C even be necessary?
Well, B and C have to do with if there's a construction of buildings or structures associated with the use. So it's not going into an existing building, for example. I could think of maybe a police outpost or something going into an existing storefront would be an instance where there'd be no construction, but there would be a use going in.
Okay,
so if it's not that circumstance and there's something being constructed, a new structure, and the use is permitted, it would still be within a zoning district. So, for example, the R4 district where we are here, and if the building that was being proposed were to be 50 feet high and 45 feet were allowed, and don't quote me on that, but I think that's the requirement here, then in that case, it would be non-compliance with the underlying district. And so then this procedure would follow with the DAPR review and city council consideration.
Okay, so it's the difference between use and the actual structure.
That's the most likely outcome.
Okay, so under A, any use of the city can be in any district, and they would not have to seek any kind of they wouldn't have to come to the Plan Commission and get in order to have that use. They wanted to build, this building somewhere else in another R4 district. They wouldn't have to, the city wouldn't have to come and get approval for that use. However, in B, if they're seeking to construct a new building or do any form of construction with respect to a building that would otherwise be non-compliant with the underlying zoning, right? And so wouldn't that mean that in B, where it says where the construction of buildings and structures owned or operated, where the construction of buildings and structures owned or operated by the city do not comply. So if the city were to buy a building, an existing building, that was non-compliant with its current in its current district. There's a factory in an R4 district, but the building's already existing, but now it's going to be some municipal use. Would the city have to, under this language, under your reading of this language, would the city have to seek approval for that?
It would not. That's not what's intended.
That would be existing non-conforming, and it would just move forward because the building's existing, not making any changes, and the use is permitted. Yes?
Correct. Yeah, unless there's some other non-compliance was created, parking wouldn't trigger. The parking requirements wouldn't trigger in this instance. So unless some other change is being made, impervious surface was being increased, something of that.
Okay. So then under B, capital B, small a, where it says the non-compliance is necessary, can you think of a situation where it might not necessarily be absolutely necessary, but would otherwise be it would be favorable to the city? I mean, because when you use the word necessary, unless there's literally no other piece of land available to the city, which, that wouldn't ever happen because the city could always find somewhere else to put whatever building it wants. It would seem to me that a necessary standard is a little too high. And then with respect to small b, the adverse impact on surrounding properties is minimized. What's the I guess the wording, I guess, confuses me because it's minimized from what?
So I guess it depends on what the potential adverse impact was. If it were a setback issue or something, potentially screening would be something that would help, or there could be some design treatment. And frankly, this language, that the small a and small b are in the existing section of the code, and that's where that came from. But that's not to say it can't change.
Mm-hmm.
And so just the clarification that item large A is essentially there's no substantial difference between the existing code and item A. It's essentially the first wording of 6.7-4 municipal use exception. Is that correct?
That's correct. That language is the same. I think it clarifies a little bit. It's all in one section now, so it could be read as being unclear whether city council approval is required for that first instance. I think the intention here is to separate this out and then clarify a little bit that when there's something constructed that doesn't comply with all the underlying zoning requirements, then there's the city council approval required.
So, Commissioner Isaac, are you willing to let other commissioners ask questions, or are you going to proceed?
I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Slaw.
I'm just wondering if the city can provide is there any additional background you can provide on, I see from the packet that the Planning and Development Committee discussed this. Was there a circumstance or set of circumstances that brought this discussion to the fore?
Yes, so there was an example, a water pump station that was constructed on McDaniel and Church, essentially just on the east side of the channel there, property that the city leases from MWRD. And so there was, that went through this process. It went to DAPR and then went to City Council. City Council approved by resolution, but there were concerns that came up from residents. I just look back, but I think mostly following that approval by City Council. So I think that was the concern, that there was not that same type of notice that we have for other type of development procedures, and that if residents would have gotten that mailed notice, it would have been a more robust process with more public input prior to the decision being made. So I think that was the impetus for looking at noticing requirements.
Commissioner Isaac, do you still have your light on, or? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's off now. Okay. All right. Well, I also have a question. It's more regarding scale. Is there any effective scale on this process? For example, over 20,000 square feet, it becomes a planned development for most items. Is that the case for municipal buildings? I.e., for example, they wanted to move this building somewhere else, would it become a planned development? And how is that accounted for? Or is it by right, the city council approval go through DAPR or city council approval? And is that the intent?
It's a good question. The intent wasn't to change anything in the existing regulations regarding that. I don't know if that instance is.
So the existing wording, though, would allow, say, large city facilities to be built without going through the plan development process. And this is just not proposing to modify that.
Yeah, we might have to think about that a little bit, but I think so, because the use would be otherwise a planned development's a special use. And so if the use does not require a special use permit and becomes a permitted use as a city use, I don't think it would then require a planned development.
Okay.
But there could be some interpretation there or some room to clarify that in the code. And another recent example, the new Robert Crown Center that's being built did go before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a zoning variation. I think at least for parking, there may have been some, I think maybe impervious, but it did go through the variation process.
Voluntarily or by ordinance?
Probably somewhat voluntarily. I mean, it may have been interpreted. It probably may have been the possibility to interpret it that it could have fallen under municipal use exemption.
Okay. Are there any other questions by commissioners? All right. Well, I see we do have one person in the audience who would like to speak on this matter. It's on behalf of what was the on behalf of yes. All right. Well, so do you know the procedure? You're going to first have to raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth.
I was just I only wanted to make a comment.
So, okay, so if you don't want to ask a question, then you can
Just
get
wanna
the
make
comment later, okay? But you can still raise your hand and promise to tell the truth. Okay, there we go. That'll carry over, all right? So, all right. All right, so actually, I guess we are to that point where we can have where we can have public testimony on the issue. So
Okay.
why don't you please
You
state
ready?
your name and address?
I got it. My name's Janet Steidel. I live at 1401 Davis Street. I am speaking on behalf of Joan Safford, who lives at 1618 Wesley Avenue. She could not be here tonight, and this is in regard, you know what it's in regard to the changes in section 6-7-4. Ms. Safford forwarded her concerns and suggestions to Alderman Rue Simmons, I believe, and felt it was important to have these presented at the Plan Commission as well. So that's what I'm doing. Ms. Safford supports the proposed change, but believes it should be made stronger by requiring notice to properties within 1,000 feet rather than the proposed 500 feet, based on the fact that some of the properties that would qualify for the municipal use exemption are quite large and could potentially have broad impact. I quote, Ms. Stafford. A 1,000-foot notice requirement is what is required for a planned development, and it seems a more appropriate measure for notification when considering the possible impact of a non-conforming municipal use. Secondly, Ms. Safford recommends that proposed municipal uses should be reviewed by the Plan Commission, in addition to the already required review by DAPR. I quote Ms. Safford again. Plan Commission meetings not only provide the opportunity for public comment, but also would permit public questioning of the developer, in this case the city, and public testimony by those residing within 500 feet of the project under consideration, unquote. Plan Commission meetings are scheduled in the evening, which would also allow greater community input than the DAPR meetings, which occur in the afternoon, when many employed but affected people cannot attend. Thank you.
Ms. Steidel, if that is a written written testimony by Joan Stafford, I would love for you to submit it as evidence as part of it. Perfect, thank you, because that makes it a little more official. There we go, thank you. All right. So, I think we can, are there any other questions by commissioners at this point? If not, I'll close the public portion of this item and go on to deliberations by the commissioners. So, are there any questions of staff anymore? Or any comments about the evidence? Commissioner Isaac.
Yeah, I think your questioning and Ms. Stafford's comments are well taken. It seems to me that that C could be made much simpler. I don't know that I have a suggestion, but I think it'd be made much simpler to just state that the city will take the same steps that any other applicant would take with respect to any kind of variances that it wishes, to get out of whatever district it's putting in, right? So they're not the use would be permitted, but if you're going to build something that's outside the bounds of that district, you should go through the same process and give the constituents an opportunity to say something about it. That's my comment.
I think we move past the question. Can I ask a question of the city still? Yeah. So did you look at any precedents for other municipalities and how they handle this sort of situation?
I don't believe we did. No, I did not.
All right.
I believe when Ms. Safford came to Planning and Development Committee, when the item was discussed there, she referenced some other communities. So I think there are other communities that have some sort of procedure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think, well, our options appear to be I'm not sure, to motion to approve, to mention to ask for an amendment to it and approve as amended or modified, or to reject, or is there, Mr. DeBose, is there is there a choice to refer this to the zoning committee of the Plan Commission for further discussion and development? I mean, with the questions, so I think the change is substantial enough that we may be proposing that it may warrant some discussion. So is that an alternative for us?
Chair Louis Hudebo's Assistant City Attorney. That
It's
is an option.
always an option. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Well, as part of our due diligence, we will have to go through the standards for approval. So should we review? Is it section 3, 4, 5 of the municipal code? Standards for amendments.
Chair Lewis?
Yes. Commissioner Isaac.
Can we have a motion to send it to the zoning committee before we go through the standards? Because if it's going to go there, there's no reason to go through the standards.
Well, I think the standards are simply to clarify whether we think it's meeting or not, but
Okay.
meeting or not, I don't believe it is a vote or taking action. I think it will help clarify whether this is consistent or not, and help to spur a little discussion on whether or not, where the holes are in it or not. So
Understood.
So whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive general plan as adopted and amended from time to time by the city council. So Commissioner, thoughts on whether this is consistent with the general comprehensive plan?
It seems like the spirit is correct, perhaps, but maybe the language isn't strong enough to really enforce the comprehensive plan in a meaningful way.
Can I have you clarify that? I mean, it's not strong enough, doesn't go far enough?
Doesn't go far enough.
Doesn't go far enough
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
It's giving, to,
I think
Correct.
it's important to provide the notice, but
Yes.
perhaps it needs to be done in a way that it can be open the opportunity for more people affected to have an opportunity to be involved.
right. Whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the character of existing development within the immediate vicinity of the subject property. Well, that is something that I think can only come out through a public hearing. I mean, it's well, let's see how this is. So this is whether the amendment is compatible with the overall character of the existing development within the immediate facility, which is a rather odd statement since it's specific, site-specific, and this has no zoning district per se. So there's no way to really determine whether this has the potential to not be compatible with the overall character of existing development. Is that not true? I mean, by nature of whatever is put in by the municipality, so it's hard.
The text that's being changed, right? The only change is this this notice requirement,
Mhm.
and so that's the amendment. It's maybe not applicable to our, to what this standard may be not applicable to our current subject matter.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just notice, but there was the question raised that because of the scale of the development, it might be worth noticing for 1,000-foot radius as opposed to a 500-foot radius. So
Agreed.
so there's no, yeah. So without more boundaries, it's very difficult to say. So I would characterize that as maybe not satisfied, unless there's objection. All right, whether the proposed amendment will have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties.
Once again, wouldn't that depend on what it is?
Once again, wouldn't that depend on what the building is or facility?
I would have to agree, but, so without boundaries, it's hard to determine. The adequacy of public facilities and services. Commissioner.
That one is maybe not applicable because it is a public facility by nature, but it's or maybe it's satisfied because it's a public.
Yeah, you might
facility.
say that if the city is going to put it in, they're going to make the services available. If they need a bigger water line, they'll make a bigger water line. If they'll need more sewer infrastructure, they'll make more sewer infrastructure. So I guess that could be satisfied, but again, it's not specific. So I think, again, we have those, I see those four choices before us, and I'm wondering if anyone will venture a motion.
Chair Lewis, I move that we refer this matter to the zoning committee of the Plan Commission for further review and discussion with respect to strengthening the notice requirements as it relates to the scale of variance to any development planned by the city.
We have a motion by Commissioner Isaac. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sloss. All right, so I think we should do a roll call vote. And everyone present can vote on this.
Yes. All right. Commissioner Dubin?
Aye.
Commissioner Isaac?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloss? Commissioner Hugo?
Aye.
And Chair Lewis.
Aye. All right, so there has been a motion that has been passed to refer case PLND 0077 to the zoning committee of the Plan Commission for further study. So at this time, the next item is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I believe we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Oh, very good. Very astute. All right, so we got right into it. And so item number 2 is approval of the minutes of the August 7th, 2019 meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any comments, corrections, or amendments to those? No?
Nope.
No? No? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Dubin,
Second.
Commissioner Isaac. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All against? All right. All abstentions? If you want to. Okay. All right. Very good. So, now do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner Isaac. Commissioner Dubin. All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Aye. All against? The August 28th meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission is hereby adjourned. Thank you.